Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our fourth Masterclass workshop series, putting together a press kit as a musician with Ricky Castanedo Laredo. I'm Hannah Imam, and I'm the spoken word manager at CITR, and I'll be facilitating the Q&A at the end. If you've been attending this workshop series, you're probably familiar with me by now. For those who don't know, CITR is a campus and community radio station at University of British Columbia. CITR has partnered with the amazing folks at Community Arts Council of Vancouver to provide you with this very exciting workshop series. And we have one last panel left on creating equitable events happening this Thursday at 7 p.m. And Shannon will put the Eventbrite link in the chat and you can register. It's free, just like all the other workshops. A few housekeeping things before we get started. Please keep yourself muted throughout the workshop. Oh, that was ironic. This event has closed captioning and you can enable that by clicking live transcript. We do have a Q&A session at the end and you can ask your questions by either unmuting yourself or putting your question in the chat and I can ask on your behalf. This event will be recorded and later uploaded to our YouTube channel and you can always revisit if you want to refresh your knowledge. And showing your video is encouraged, but you can go off camera if that is more comfortable for you. Now, before we begin, I'm going to say a brief land honoring, and I want everyone to take a moment and reflect on why it is important to do so and what it means to honor the lands we reside on. This workshop is taking place on the unceded, traditional, and shared territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations in the city colonially known as Vancouver. And we honor the historic and continual care of this land by our host nations. Media and art practices have traditionally been rooted in white gaze and colonial narratives. CITR and Community Arts Council of Vancouver understand the power of sharing stories and a responsibility to do so ethically, as well as actively push for more equity in the community arts sector. With that, I'll pass it on to Shannon, who's the Program and Community Development Manager at Community Arts Council of Vancouver, to say a few words before we begin.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the workshop today. Like Hannah said, my name is Shannon. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the Program Manager at Community Arts Council of Vancouver. We also call it CACV, so you might hear that said in today's workshop. The mission here at CACV is to further the development and community arts through Vancouver, and we're continuing that work towards our goal through many programs that we have here, like this free workshop at CITR. If you're interested in checking out some of our other workshops, I will share a link in the chat in a couple moments. A couple of the programs that we have going on right now that you might be interested in are our Neurodivergent Artist Collective program. It's currently accepting applications. We also have an upcoming call for applications from artists and performers for our annual festival called the Vancouver Outsider Arts Festival. And we also have a community arts fund, which has the opportunity for individuals and community organizations to apply for up to $5,000 in funding for community arts projects. So lots of exciting stuff going on, lots of free programming. We'll share the link. For folks who are unable to join today and might be watching a recording, we'll share the link in the video description. I'll also share a survey at the end of the call. Please share your feedback if you have time. We'd love to hear about how today's workshop went, and then we'll use that feedback to improve future programs and events like this. Now I'll pass it over to Ricky to get started.
Great, thank you. Can everyone hear me? Everything good? Okay, sounds great. Thank you, Hannah, and thank you, Shannon. Yeah, my name is Ricky Castanedo Laredo. I am a permanent resident of Vancouver, and I have been working for CITR as their art director and graphic designer for about 8 years. Beyond that, though, I was the music director of CJSF 90.1 FM in Burnaby. I have been a juror for many festivals, including Music Waste, and I'm currently sit as a jury for the Polaris Music Prize. and I'm generally been just kind of a nerdy music person for as long as I've been able to make my own decisions. So I hope that the mixture that I have, oh, and I guess I should also mention I'm a musician. I've been playing in bands since I was like 19 years old. I've made many press kits. I have read many press kits. I engage with both the front end and back end of the music industry in a lot of ways. And I hope that this little presentation gives you a bit of an insight on what happens when you send your press kit somewhere and what you can do to make someone's life easier and ultimately your life easier as an artist that is trying, musician that is trying to get their music out there. Oh, and specifically, I'm going to focus on radio a lot, but a lot of what I'm going to talk about can also be transferred to almost any kind of press release that you want to release. If people have questions about like that kind of stuff, feel free to ask during the Q&A at the end of the session. So yeah, let's get going. So putting together your press kit for a musician, for radio, and more. So I think the first place where we need to start here is we need to talk about who you're sending this to. And again, I'm talking from a very personal place here, which is I used to be a music director. I'm still a juror. And so I am the person you're emailing to, me or a version of me, right? And the thing is, like, we're not really the authorities on anything. I think some people have an ego about it, which is fine. But if you ask me, and again, maybe this is like a good kind of umbrella here, which is like, this is very much my experience and my opinion about the process. I think I've got a good handle on it, but take it. So I'm sure some music directors out there would disagree with me on stuff, and that's fine. They can email me if they want. The short answer is no. We're just nerds. We're just people who love music. When I did my job at CJSF, it's not like I took a course in musicology or did any sort of like historical music knowledge. It's just I got chosen probably because I care a tremendous amount about music. I listen to all facets of it. I love all genres. And generally, people in these roles are people like me. They're not necessarily like, they don't wield that authority beyond like, this is their personal preference or their personal opinion or the way that they choose to handle the curation process of the station or wherever it is that you're submitting to. But some things that usually do happen, at least in my experience, is these people are usually part-time, often unpaid, and always busy. Being in radio specifically, you learn very quickly that your position is very permeable, and you're the art director, but you're also something else when you need to be, and vice versa. And a lot of arts organizations function in this way. So this is to say that it's like this person whose job is to read and vet all of these emails that come through, which let me tell you is a lot of them. Generally, we don't actually have a lot of time to do it. So keep that in mind. It's extremely subjective. Because it's very hard to be objective about music specifically, that I would beg that there isn't really like, there's very few things that would qualify as bad music, right? Like, and so with that, genre plays into it, your own preference plays into it. Sometimes it's just the mood that you're in when you're reading these press releases that really like, you don't think it does, but it affects you because ultimately that's what being human is. We listen to things, we react to them, and we bring our personal experience into it. As I've said, we're often tasked with more than just submissions. Some departments like CITRs, like CJSFs, while I used to vet a lot of the press releases, volunteers also used to vet the press releases. They are people who would come and help us out and help us get through all the press packages, all the releases, so on and so forth. And to top it all off, there's generally not very good binding guidelines for what it means to be a music director and what kind of stuff you vet into, in the case of radio, into a playlist for play, for festivals, for whatever. Like I said, it's a very subjective thing. There's a few things that, for example, here in Canada, we follow, like CanCon regulations on radio. But generally speaking, it's kind of wild west open out there, and you get to you kind of like it's kind of flavor of the week a lot of the time. And this is annoying for you guys. It's also annoying for music directors because we can't ever agree on the right way to do something. So with that in mind, I am going to tell you a couple things that I think are pretty general that should be transferable through, submitting to CJSF, but to CITR or how to get yourself published in Discorder magazine, so on and so forth. So what do they do? This is the other thing, because, a lot of music directors get, radio's changing. The way that we engage with music is changing. And with that in mind, we music directors don't really do, I think, what a lot of people think we do, which is we physically put music into programmers' hands. It's very hard. We try, and ultimately programmers, especially in community radio, get to pick what they want to play. We don't strong arm them beyond certain requirements like CanCon, PEMCon, Fair Play, which I'll go into. But generally what we're doing is we're curating a station-wide playlist. So what you're actually submitting to is to have your music played on our, to have it available to programmers does not guarantee play. But it also means that you get put onto rotations like our auto DJs. You can get used in transition moments. You are available to programmers, and if you want, generally we can get your music sent to the right programmer, but the person who chooses to do that ain't us. We tabulate the charts, recommend albums to programmers, bolded on recommend. We can only do that. We can only really recommend. Oversee any PlayStation mandate. So in the case of most of Canada, it'd be CanCon. For most of the West Coast, it's FemCon. For CITR, it's Fair Play. And we do, in fact, read almost every single email in bullet speed, but it does happen for the most part. And no, we don't often respond. So where to start with building your press kit? This may seem very, very small, but really it's like, please read submission guidelines. It's almost every station has them. I've put in my little slide here 4 different stations, 2 that I've worked for, one that is over on Victoria, and the Earshot Digital Distribution System, which I'll talk a little bit more about where to submit your music. And so we'll start with the first thing, which is please stop sending unsolicited CDs to stations that do not accept physical submissions. It's not good. It just creates, honestly, I hate to say it, but a little bit of waste for us, because generally if we're not accepting physical submissions, it's because we cannot play physical albums. Stations running out of space. There's more music being pumped out every year than there ever has been. And it's impossible to keep track of all the CDs, all the press packages, all these beautiful things that people do send, and they send to get attention. But ultimately, that's not what's important. And so what's important is your music. What's important is you. So read the submission guidelines. As I said, most stations have them for a reason. You won't get into the right hands if you do not follow the guidelines that the stations, festivals, whatever, are presenting to you. So what should be on your press kit? Your music. And don't make me look for a download link. Put my nose in it. You have no idea the amount of emails out there that come out where it's actually really, really, really hard to find the download link to your music. Very, very useful for you to make that obvious to music directors, to anybody that's looking to listen to your stuff. I always recommend also putting a sample of your music so that we don't have to download if we just want to listen to it first. Both are crucial, because the second a music director or someone in that position listens to your music and is like, okay, yeah, this is good, or this can pass, this can be vetted, we need the download to start putting it into rotation. There's a reason, mostly it's archiving, why we do that, but don't make it hard for us to listen to your music. I would recommend Bandcamp as often as possible for that. We got SoundCloud too. Good. SoundCloud generally is a little bit, the interface is not as good, I find. Bandcamp, for the most part, has resulted in a great way to share your music with a wide array of people. So have an FFO or RIYL, which stands for for fans of / read if you like. The next is simple genres that categorize your music. I've put in a CRTC's like very, very, very pared down genre policy. I'm not going to show you because it's mostly a bunch of jargon, but what you should take away from it is that the CRTC, who regulates what gets played on radio and television in Canada, actually has a description of every genre that qualifies for stations and so on and so forth. So it's very rudimentary. It's like jazz and then folk, and it explains, it's a lot, but check it out, because I don't know if a lot of people actually know that there are definitions that are technically supposed to be followed by most Canadian media. A short bio, and it's an emphasis on short because we read a lot of them, and while we want to know about you, we don't need to read your life story. It's just not necessary. So an appropriate size press photo. It's good to see. It's good to get press photos. Some stations archive them, but one is enough. We don't need a gallery shoot for it. So so going into the nitty gritty of it. 1 and 2, your music, a download link to your album. Something that's very good for people to get a handle on is using something like WeTransfer, Dropbox, Bandcamp, anywhere where you can mass store your music and send it to people. I personally love WeTransfer. It's great for sending music out, handles giant files incredibly well, has an expiry date if you're worried about it leaking. So very good tool instead of attaching singular files or zipping something into an email. Anyway, WeTransfer's pop is a good is a good tool for people to get used to.
What was that about?
What was what about?
The chat.
I'm not sure. We're gonna move on from it though.
Okay.
Not cool.
Anyway, so don't make MDs ask for your music. Also happens a lot, and we don't like, just send it to us. Just send it through to the person that you want to play your music. Sample of your songs, and it's always good to tell people what songs are your favorite. Generally, music directors are vetting an album, but sometimes we can only listen to a couple songs. So generally, when I was working for CJSF, I would ask my volunteers to listen to 3 songs. And if those 3 songs were 3 songs that you mentioned, those were the 3 songs that we're listening to. It's a good way to put your best foot forward. And I know that everyone thinks that their whole album is their best work, but pick the best thing you got. It's always good to highlight it, put it in front of us, so we can get to the meat of it faster and get you played, get you into whatever much more quickly. Clearly label your files and folders. Clean and edit your metadata. And if people have questions about metadata, I'll go more into it in the Q&A. But I've put in, again, 2 more resources that are very good for this. The short of it is your metadata is it's the code, it's like the back data that iTunes, Spotify, Bandcamp reads. We try, Emily, we do try to listen to everything that comes in. So yeah, metadata is what iTunes, what Spotify, what these programs actually look at, rather than your files or the name of your files or the name of your folders. So do I recommend? No, I wouldn't. I don't go on Twitter. So and send the right file types. This also goes back into submissions. Musicians deal with a lot of file types, MP3s, WAVs, FLACs. WAV, FLAC, those are lossless files. They're enormous. send MP3s for the most part. Some for archive purposes require WAVs. Another good reason to use WeTransfer or some sort of file delivery service is because sometimes your WAVs or your FLACs are huge, and if that's what the station wants, for example, it's what the Earshot distribution distro system wants. You would want to be able to send large files because they are lossless and archival, whereas MP3s do not. Okay. So the written details of what should be in your press releases is for fans of and read if you like. It's the easiest way to present your music to an overworked MD because a reference to something else allows us to think it's like, oh yeah, we have a show that can totally be complemented by this music, or oh, this is something that we don't often get. It's a really like that in genres, very good way to get the attention of an MD. Often we're looking for specific genres. Often we're looking for, like what is hot or what we want to see on the radio. And so really good idea to pick some notable acts, notable musicians that you think that you relate to, that you would like to be paired with. It would work if your band is unsigned for sure. Like radio gets tons of independent releases and all the time. And it's mostly what community radio deals in. It's what a lot of magazines in the city deal with. I can't guarantee that this is the way you're going to get into the Rolling Stone, but it's a very good leg up to get into some more smaller publications. Following this, what do you think your music sounds like? Lots of times people kind of get someone else to write it, or say our friends think that we sound like Def Leppard or what have you, and that's fine. But generally, we want to know what you think you sound like, because that's actually going to be the truest thing that aligns you to your sound. Genres, we've got a lot of jokey genres. They can be fun. I'm not against fun. I'm a fun person. I like to read something that's entertaining, but genres are just useful, right? So make sure that you put in genres and try to spare MDs the minute details of genre. Like if you are an acid jazz ensemble, you can just put jazz. Acid jazz is fine, but you don't need to go so deep into it. Generally, you can stick to the big ones: rock, rap, jazz, pop. Great. Okay. Identity tags. So this one is an interesting one. I worked on a project for CJSF and CITR regarding identity and radio. The only identity tag that is observed by the federal government and by Canada-wide is CanCon, which is anything that is made by Canadians. Most stations, if not all stations, have mandates to play at least 35% Canadian content on their airwaves. So if you're Canadian, which I assume most people here are, it's worth saying it. It is worth saying that you are Canadian, because CanCon is very important to the radio world. But it also doesn't hurt to, and this is obviously to people's personal preferences or how they want to approach this, but it's it doesn't hurt to put in anything else that identifies you as somebody that is from a minority community or from a group that has generally not gotten incredible amounts of airplay. It's a lot of radio, a lot of media is right now trying very hard to undo the white bias and the male bias that has existed in music. And not a lot of bands are very forefront about it. And it makes it very difficult as curators to help put music in front of audiences when we don't know who you are, which is all this to say, this is a very nuanced and difficult conversation. But never hurts to let people know. Your album details, label, release dates, compilation, you have no idea how often people miss that stuff. Bios, important, but not super important, important as a paragraph, not important as a 3-page essay. And we want to know very specific things like who are you, your background, what content and context you exist in, what you're inspired by. Yeah, spare the gory details. Album art and the band photo. Mind your sizes. I'm a designer. And so this is my other pet peeve, which is resize stuff for web. Generally, people aren't printing your photos or your album covers. We're keeping them on file in an archive that is usually digital. So please don't send printable PDFs. File types that work, PNGs, JPEGs, great. It also will make attaching them on your end much easier. Don't paste it into the email. Do attach it. And even better if you send it through clearly marked links. And I will get to that in a second. Oh, right. Yeah. So some good tools to have for this purpose, in case you don't have them. Photoshop, not free, expensive, and it's an annual subscription, but it's by far the best one at it. Affinity Photo, it's very good, very close to Photoshop. It's less expensive. It's a one-time purchase. Figma, free with paid features and not as intuitive. GIMP, it's the worst, but it's free and you can resize photos on it and it's perfect for that. And MailChimp's built-in photo editor. So if you're using MailChimp, which I'll go into a little bit later, MailChimp makes this happen for you. It literally has a tool built for it. So cool. So putting it all together and putting it into the MD's greasy hands. So an email is fine and great. It's perfectly okay to send through emails, as long as you put it together well and following some of the advice that I've given about attaching and so on and so forth. There's nothing bad with just a good old email with a good attachment or some links in it. Perfect. Good subject lines that are clear and to the point. So if your submission, make sure that it's there, because sometimes it gets lost in the middle of all the other emails that have nothing to do with submissions. Your band name, your album, tags that you'd like to be associated with, all great things to put in your subject line. Makes it very quick to be able to look through and find your stuff. Use free tools to help the work easier. So for example, build a website. It's really the era of centralizing your work and your life as a band or as an artist. Is like we've left websites because Facebook kind of dominated for a while. And now I honestly can't think of a better place. Build a website. You can send through links from your website into the email and spare yourself having to attach anything, meeting file limits, all that. It can all live there and you link it through and it's nice and clean and very easy for MDs to get through quickly. Use mailing services to manage contact list and mailings. MailChimp is great for that. Tiny letter used to be better, but it's still an option, I guess. In my time at CGSF, MailChimp was pretty much the way that we serviced every programmer. It's the way we contacted people and maintained all of our press contacts in the correct order, all of our musician contacts. It's a fantastic tool, and moreover, it's made for this. Something like MailChimp spares you the need to know how to set up an email, because MailChimp literally walks you through it and helps you set up so that your photos are the right size, that your links aren't dead. So if you feel like you don't know where to start, where to put it together, get yourself onto one of these services that literally are built to make press kits. That's effectively what you do with something like MailChimp. You build your press kit that then you can modify for the different kinds of submissions that you want. Either that could be to a radio station, it could be to a festival, it could be to get a tour going or an agent, whatever. It's a very good way to manage your press. And key here, you do not need to personalize it. It's very romantic and very nice. And like, if you want to do it, like, please go ahead. I was always very grateful. However, I don't need you to know my name. It's just like these positions shift around a lot too. And it's like, if that's going to be what's going to stop you, you'd rather you send it through to as many people as possible. If people are going to get burnt because you didn't get their name right, I would say they don't have their priority as a music director quite in check. and then going to the project by the NCRA, which is the EDDS, which is the Earshot Digital Distribution System. Not a lot of people know about it, and they should, because it's the way that it's essentially a generalized database for all music in Canada. That's the goal. You can upload it. I think it's like $7 per song or $50 an album. But then it's available to everyone that signed up for it, which is most radio stations, at least most of the community radio stations. It is a great archive because it's not something that you have to keep. It is hosted by the NCRA. Great place to store your music for the long run. Great place to get discovered. And it takes you through a lot of these things that I'm talking about regarding like your metadata and your genre definitions, all that. The EDS has it all automated and built in for you. So it's not free, but it is cheap, and it is a good way to tap even stations or more that you didn't even know you could get your music played at. So definitely a good resource. Following up, most music directors have ad and chart reports, and you can sign up for them. And this is great because if you're charting, it means that you got added to the station's library generally. And even most stations will just do a general ads email. And the ads email is an email that literally says, like, we added this stuff into last week. Why this is good is because it makes it much more efficient for you to check this stuff rather than you waiting for a music director to answer you. And the reason we do not answer, or at my time during a music director, we don't answer, is because if we have to answer you, we'd have to answer hundreds, close to thousands of people. And that is very hard to do on a part-time salary with limited hours and way much more to do, because that's generally how these jobs go. So don't take it personally. Generally, everything is listened to and heard. We just don't have the time to be like, this got rejected, this got accepted. So, some stations keep track of stuff like play count, specific show play. Most don't. It's just not a thing that a lot of stations have a hard time even tracking like what specific parameters are playing a lot of the time. So it's good to just understand that it's like it got added, and that is still, that's good, and it's likely being played by a show, but sometimes we don't have the answer for which show or who or what time. Don't be disheartened, because there's a lot of music. The reason we're even having this conversation is because there's so much music now. Music is so much easier to be made. It's much easier to get it out to places. There's no more door knocking. No, like you can literally send an email. You are among millions of people who have this access, which is not a bad thing. It's a great thing. It actually makes being able to send music to people so much more accessible for the most part. So things to keep in mind, though. It does mean that there's a lot more submissions to go through than there used to be. And always email MDs like it's your first time submitting, because you never know if it might be your first time submitting to that specific MD. And also because you should always show your best foot forward. With a new album, pretend that you don't know somebody and try to impress them. Like, submit and give us everything again. That's fine. Because if we have it, then we get to be like, we have this. Doesn't matter, we'll just add the album. But if we miss something, it's a really good way for us on the back end to be able to take it and update your file or update your archive, what have you. So yeah, that is the majority of what I wanted to talk to you today. But I am happy to go into specifics if that's what people want. I purposely left the kind of larger gap here because there's a lot of ground to cover, and I wouldn't be able to cover it all in great detail in an hour. But whatever is important to you that I can hopefully answer, I am happy to answer now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ricky, for this super informative workshop. And I hope everybody took away something from this. And yeah, we have a brief Q&A session now. So go ahead, unmute yourself, ask your question, or you can pop your question in the chat and I can ask on your behalf. Okay,